This is the live recording of the Sunday Facebook show and open meeting. If you heard this before, you can zap straight to 1 minute and we'll be straight into the meeting. You only hear this leader when you're on the live stream itself, or if you're listening to the replay of the live stream, which will retain this. If you want to listen to us as a replay, you need to use a Podbeam app, and if you want to use listen to us in an edit, the podcast will be published onto our page fairly soon by Harry after he's done the edit. So this is the open meeting for Autistic Radio. We've had a busy week. We're working with a professional at Strathclyde University on an autism and dementia project. We're very hoping that as that project progresses, the researchers themselves are going to find important information for the elder autistic community. And they've brought up a new phrase to us, and we've been discussing it. And the phrase is co-production of research, co-design of research. And in those two phrases, there feels to us like a change. It feels as though this is a new way of framing the seat at the table for autistic people. To make a research project work, it has to get validity, it has to publish, and it has to go to conferences and make itself known. So we were trying to do our best to enable that by working alongside the researcher in answering her questions and giving her some material for a talk that she's going to be making at one of the country's biggest dementia conference, certainly Scotland's biggest, maybe the UK's biggest. It's an opportunity for them as a researcher to get their research known and get the importance of their research known. So we've worked with them and we've given our authentic voices of what co-production might mean, what co-design of research might mean. And we'll be putting that out as a podcast, and the edits that she's used will be at a national conference. It's one of those valuable ways that we at Autistic Radio can make a difference to each other's lives, helping the right kind of research, enabling researchers to use the neurodivergent model, because so much research seems to exclude us. I have to report to you guys that we've had a little bit of reaction to our ABA project. And I was speaking with Harry earlier. We looked through the comments section for a LinkedIn post. When our podcasts are published, they post automatically to Facebook and they publish to LinkedIn. And it was with a heavy heart that I saw that our conversation on ABA, the start of a discussion with the ABA community, had a negative comment on it. But I'm really pleased to report that after engaging with that person and saying how the project for us was a way of keeping a conversation in the open, they went away saying that they really respected that position. So it moved from the feeling of one of those social media conversations where somebody barked at you to one where we were able, in gentle text conversation, to go away with respect. And I really hope that that is the rest of the kind of comments that we're going to get, because ABA is a really difficult situation for people. That's all I have to say, guys. Is there any other business for you? Then we'll move over to Harry. Harry, you've got the Facebook post for us.
Yes, good evening, Julian. Good evening, everyone. This
Hi.
is Spectrum Voices Conversation. Try again. Good evening, everyone. This is Spectrum Voices Conversation, here every Sunday from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. UK time, and 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, United States time difference. This is a Facebook post sharing of the broadcast, and the first post of this broadcast, which is Sunday, the 2nd of June 2024, is from Neurodiversity Manitoba. And they are a mental health service and described as neurodiversity affirming, lived experience supports for schools, adults, families, teens, and children, and they're based in Canada. And what they've shared is about POTS. And I was wondering what that was myself, so that's the reason for sharing. And what it stands for, they've got it's what's good about this post. It's basically a presentation, and it's colourful, and it's got a lot of information, and it's about 10 slides. But what I'll do is just share the supporting information on the post itself before moving on for the discussion. So what it says is POTS stands for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. Orthostatic refers to standing up, and tachycardia means a fast heart rate. The most common symptoms are dizziness or feeling faint upon standing from a sitting or lying position. However, it is much more complex than that. Neurodivergent autistics experience, describe, and present their sensory experiences very differently from neurotypical people. When studies on disorders can cause discomfort and pain, such as HDDS and POTS, are conducted separately from the neurodiverse community, usually exclusively with neurotypical participants, we only get a picture of how these disorders present and impact neurotypical folks. When an autistic person presents with pain or discomfort and doesn't express it in the way that neurotypical doctors are used to hearing or seeing, they may be dismissed, the concerns and symptoms minimised. Unfortunately, neurodivergent folks are used to being invalidated and not taken seriously, especially when it comes to physical pain or health concerns. Researchers need to involve the neurodivergent community in studies which impact us. Our voices and experiences are valid and need to be considered in order to provide competent and appropriate healthcare to all neurodivergent folks. So, what's your thoughts?
Nothing about us without us.
Say it again, Morris, sorry.
Just a nothing about us without us.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, that's been said many times before on other topics. Nothing without us, sort of thing. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. The presentation itself, I won't read it all because it's 10 slides, but what it says is there are multiple types and health impacts of POTS. It can impact blood flow to vital organs such as lungs, heart, and brain. It can also affect temperature, regulation, digestion, and blood pressure. There is a long list of possible symptoms, and the severity can vary significantly, and I'll read just a few of them. There's lightheadedness, faintness, short-term memory loss, mental clouding, brain fog, difficulty finding words, difficulty with depth perception, sensory integration issues, migraine headaches, exercise intolerance, fatigue, and muscle weakness. It's all pretty informative and quite heavy. Has people heard of this before?
No, I don't think I had heard of it written down as a syndrome before, or a. The thought to me is that it's about whether we as autistic people manage to get our symptoms understood, whether we manage to communicate them. And there is a difficulty when you go to the medics. There is a difficulty in explaining things. The problem for me is that requesting the medics to be the people who have to do yet another thing in understanding and communicating their patients, that seems like the most difficult way of going around this. It's more, how do we ourselves manage to present in such a way that that we overcome it? What techniques can we use? Most of the time we keep demanding really, really busy people like doctors and teachers to change, and I think that's valid. I think some people will take that information and make it and run with it, but there's another side to it, and that's us. How can we understand ourselves enough? How can we make it possible for us to do the communicating?
Yep, it's how the information and communication, the balance of it. Because sometimes you can get too much information, sometimes even too much communication, and sometimes it's done in the language it can be used. I mean, a lot of the medical stuff, because I feel it has to be, so it emphasizes a point, can be very negative, and there's always this thing it always says, no matter what it's talking about, it says if something's prolonged enough, it can be fatal, and that can send anybody's mind into overdrive. I know it would certainly do it to me because I've done this with a few things, with things like fatigue and all that. And I used to go to not medical professionals, I would say, but basically Doctor Internet, Wikipedia, for instance, which is a very dangerous thing to use if you're wanting accurate information. And it's that seeking information and sometimes you just get too much of it. And sometimes it can be misunderstood or it's the wrong information in the first place, and that can it can actually make you really unwell, mentally as well as physically. Information is good, but it depends where it comes from and the communication in between. The next post is from Neurodivergent Rebel. Public figure, Lyric Rivera, they, them, trans, non-binary, gender fluid, hyperlexic, autistic, ADHD, educator, artist and best-selling author. And what they're talking about is, this is actually a good point, it's talking about warning to other page owners who share humorous memes. Basically, they're saying that Facebook's moderation robots don't seem to understand humour and sarcasm, which means even humorous posts that aren't really news or intending to be taken seriously are being fact checked and used against pages as strikes against us for sharing false information. Something to consider when you're sharing something sarcastic that a robot might not understand the humour in. And they say that autistic people can't understand sarcasm. Sure, I struggle with it sometimes, but this is ridiculous. Has this happened to anyone else? I know that we shared a few sarcastic, kind of dark humour and extent posts to, to be a bit more light-hearted and certainly in kind of some of the sensitive information, sensitive posts that were shared, because it can be quite deep and it can be quite intense. So our own page has done that as well. So it's worth bearing in mind that it can be misunderstood by the Facebook bots, so to speak. What's people's thoughts on that?
I'm struggling to see the point of the post, to be honest. I just don't get it. Sorry. What are we supposed to do? Not have humour?
I think it's to do with words and how sentences are constructed. Like, if you put something across that's sarcastic, it may look like you're being informative and giving wrong information. I don't really know. I do and I don't. It just depends, because I've had, in my own personal Facebook, I mean, I've had kind of warnings against certain language, which isn't anything. It wasn't bad. It wasn't swearing. It wasn't prejudiced or anything. It was basically, sometimes what happens basically is sometimes people quote others, like from a book, from a film, from a song, and it's taken literally in terms of that's not correct in what you're saying, or it sounds, it may be violent, or it sounds it's threatening, or it just sounds prejudiced. I think it's just the way Facebook is set up. It sort of kind of hinders that, which I find very odd, because considering the amount of people that suffer from the prejudice like racism, sexism, and people are actually complaining that the likes of Facebook don't tackle it well, it's really frustrating that other things that are innocent are misunderstood and penalties are given. So it's just being careful and basically saying it's ridiculous.
I've had one, I noticed the experience during this year of a removed post, and I got no idea what the post was. I've got to actually track back to find out what it was. So that one, folks have to know what posts they actually posted and are missing. Otherwise, they're not going to learn what to avoid. Apart from the principle she shared, yes. The humour saying the opposite of what you mean. Specifics, you know. Yeah.
Have you got two devices on, Morris? Maybe that's affecting your sound. Sorry to take away from the broadcast. It's just to make sure that works comfortable for you.
Yeah, I always have every week. I've done nothing different this week, but this week something's happened in the Podbean settings that I can't mute it. I have it so I can look at Podbean and get Justin's. So.
Okay.
You can mute that device that's got the pod beam on it so that we don't hear it through your microphones.
I have, and it's not worked.
You can mute the whole device as well as you in the program Podbeam.
I've got the volume on minimum.
Apologies for interrupting the broadcast. It was just to try and make sure that everyone's involved, and if it's kind of something can be worked out quickly. But if not, we can move on. There's no problem.
I'll cut this out of the replay as well, Harry. There's nobody listening to us at the moment, so we're okay.
Okay, no problem. I do understand Morris's point, though. I've had issues in the past where I've had posts in my own profile, Facebook profile, being removed, and it says something like it was inappropriate. I don't know how many people do this, but because I do a lot of serious stuff like this, and I'm involved in kind of community organisations, a lot of my own personal Facebook is humour. Sometimes it's staff things like stupid dad jokes. I mean, I certainly don't share anything with, too much vulgar language because even though I'm in my 40s, I just don't think it seems appropriate for that to be shared where my mum and dad can see it. I just have that in my head. I wouldn't, not that I would use that anyway for anybody, but I mean, it's swearing generally. So, but I share a lot of daft humour, pictures, just silly things, just to kind of lighten up my own profile and basically to make myself feel a bit better because sometimes I get so intensely involved with a lot of things and online meetings and stuff and typing on the computer reports, whatever. So I use a lot of that. So I do take the warning of watch what you're posting because Facebook may take it the wrong way. Although it's very hard to be careful because it's very unpredictable in what they think or what it seems to think is inappropriate or not, considering what's gets shared online and let's let it go, as I've described before. It's always a minefield when it comes on to being on the internet and being social media, as I've said many times before. The next post is from the Quirky Autistic. An education page is described. The thoughts of a 48-year-old autistic woman who works as a Senko and a learning support teacher. And what they're sharing is recently I disclosed that I am autistic to someone, and once again I had the response of, I have to say, I wouldn't have thought that of you. It was relevant to something important I was doing and had a bearing on that situation, and it was important for them to know this information about me to put into context something I was telling them. But yet again, someone who is not a psychologist and does not know my background and my autistic traits feel it's okay to say to me that they would have never have thought the diagnosis I would have been would be a thing they ever thought about me. If someone had diagnosed that they had early stage of MS, it would it be appropriate to say, I never thought of that about you? When my running group lady told us that she was getting out of breath and struggling as she was having tests, and these turned out to be symptoms of the late stages of pancreatic cancer, as it always is with pancreatic cancer, sadly, I didn't say, I would never said that about you. Why is an autism diagnosis seen as different? The brilliant page Man Behaving Dadly talks about how people say the same thing about his autistic son, and how he wants to say in response, go on, Luke, do an autism for the lady. I wonder if I sat in the corner rocking or started to line things up in my office or suddenly disappeared to Las Vegas to count cards with a brother I never knew I had, a la Rain Man, people would exclaim, oh yes, I can see she's autistic. The photo below is of me and my brother. I haven't ever run off to Las Vegas with him, but he did move to Canada to work in a bank. Not the same thing, I know. Autism is so much more than having an extraordinary talent, though some autistic people do have an extraordinary talent, and that's okay. It's more than lining things up because my autism is much more about what's going on inside my head, and this is what people find difficult. Because I can mask. I was a cellist performer, worked in bars performer. I have spent 20 plus years being a teacher performer, and I have had an alcoholic mother. You watch their behaviour intensely in order to perform the right act they need to not to be aggressive. I can operate well and appear like I don't have any difficulties. I understand people may not think autistic when they meet me, but they could be a little less surprised when I tell them that I am. They can react in an empathetic manner and sensitive way that it would be other diagnosis they might have the privilege of someone disclosing to them. Because someone disclosing a diagnosis to you is certainly a privilege. They trust you enough to tell you something that could be very difficult, something they haven't told many people or any people, and you have to at that moment try to get your response right. Don't question it. Have an unconditional regard to their disclosure. It would make them feel they judge their trust in you to be correct, and this is a huge thing in itself. That's quite powerful. I do understand what it's meaning. There's always that, remember, we've kind of talked before in other posts, it's similar to this in many ways, is the surprise of many people when you disclose autism, because the stereotype of autism or what people think autism in their own heads actually is, and they say it in a way that they don't think you have it, but they're being complimentary, even though it doesn't sound that way. It sounds patronising and insulting. So it's the same sort of thing. What's your thoughts?
I certainly know that this is something that comes up again and again, and people have a very difficult experience when people appear to be denying a diagnosis or an identity. And if you take it just from that angle, then yeah, the post, if it gets to somebody who's likely to say those things, or somebody who works with autism, then they're likely to sort of learn from it and decide that that isn't the best way of complimenting somebody. But there's another side to this, and if we're not triggered by it, it's an opportunity for a learning experience, in the same way that this person has gone away and written a long post on Facebook to explain things in a very elegant way. Face to face with somebody who's put their foot in it by saying, oh, you don't look autistic, or you don't seem like it, or that's not the sort. It just means that that person's idea of what autism is incredibly restricted. And I don't think ignorance should be something that's belittled. And I don't think somebody's cack-handed poor attempt at saying, look, it doesn't matter, I don't see disability, that kind of rubbish, should be immediately, if you can cope with it, I don't think it should be immediately criticised. I think we can lead somebody in a different direction if we're in the right place to do so. I understand what the poster's saying. I just hope that more and more people have the strength to be able to do something with it,
The one thing I always find interesting is someone describing autism to me, not knowing that I'm autistic, and how they say it and the approach they give it. I've had it a few times. Because obviously I don't disclose I have an autism, unless it's necessary. And in general, it isn't really necessary. And sometimes it can be outdated language they use. Sometimes they talk about, because usually they're talking about someone that needs a lot of support. And I always wonder, what would it be like if I disclosed that to that particular person? Would they go, you don't look autistic, or you don't have that? Because actually think about it, I think within myself, I come across like a stereotypical autistic man in his mid-40s, because of the way that my behaviours, but maybe it's just not so obvious to other people. Sometimes it's amazing how people judge you as well, and they don't mean it in a bad way, but sometimes the way you dress. I mean, this is sort of related. It's nothing to do with autism, but I remember I used to go to a lot of mental health support groups, and I was going to a meeting, afterwards, like a social group, sit and talk and drink coffee and eat biscuits, just, somewhere for people to go so they didn't feel alone. And someone actually came up to me and says, "Are you a patient? You don't look like a patient," because I was wearing a shirt and tie and look smart. It's like, I didn't say anything, but I'm thinking, what did they expect me to look like? Did they expect me to look a certain way, like a mess, or dress in a certain way? So that can be related to the autism thing as well. It's just, but most people, well, many people don't mean any harm by it. But sometimes you can just be up. Sometimes it's sensitivity, because you fight so hard to, self confidence and all that kind of stuff. It's like the simple things can just wind you up, just depending on what people are saying. But you've got to remind yourself that a lot of people will have minimum knowledge in what autism is, and they only are aware of certain people they've met, or even someone in a television program. So there's a lot of assumptions made, and yeah, but you need to be quite. I've tried to be quite, not lenient, but understanding of the other person that's not aware of it, or is not aware of the whole scope that you may have, because many people who are autistic have been looking for so much information, or have learnt so much information over time to get the understanding of self. And of course, other people won't see that, especially if they're not aware that you're autistic. Sometimes you've got to remember other people and their perceptions. and it's not always in a bad way.
I don't want to make people feel that they should react to these things in any way. I just feel that if we understand autism, our own autism ourselves to some degree, we're very fortunate. And the world doesn't understand autism. There are a few people that are experts because they've read a leaflet, and there are a few people that are still dealing with 1970s information, or one autistic person they know, and we have to realise that we are the ambassadors. Maybe it's fine if we go away to a group and we complain, and I just don't know that I would do it on Facebook, you know. But this person's doing it in a way that's educational, so there's a difference, I suppose. We need to lead the way somehow, and part of advocating is understanding other people's ignorance, I suppose.
The next post is from Autistic Revolution, who are a magazine, and the description is: a warm welcome to Autistic Revolution, an online magazine developed by autistic people. We are a community-based organisation connecting folk through art, photography and written word. Our love language is neurodivergent affirming. And what they've shared is they're introducing in their magazine a new pet section, saying it's announcing a new animal and pet focus section. Jennifer Hoffman is excited to be the page guide of this new section of Autistic Revolution magazine in order of their family cat, Kirby, who is a self-appointed therapy and emotional support cat. He recently passed away after being part of the family for 17 plus years. And it's called Kirby's Corner, and it'll be dedicated to contents about animals who bring us joy. We can accept poems, photos, stories, illustrations, cartoons, you name it, of our animals, friends, and companions. And there's obviously a submission link as part of this post. So I like this because although I've never had this, but I have read and we have read and shared many different things about support animals, generally a dog or a cat, for people with autism or autistic people who feel comforted by the presence, the company, the relationship with that particular animal and how it makes the things a little easier. And I'm talking as someone without that, so excuse my ignorance if I'm wording it a certain way that, that's it's not fully complimentary. But it's certainly interesting, and it's great that that exists for many people who need that kind of support, and that can happen. Because I know that I'm aware of people saying that many autistic people relate to animals much more than relate to fellow human beings. It's an interesting one. It's certainly a nice thing to share.
I think one of the lovely things about my daughter's childhood was we had a middle-aged dog, an intelligent one, who was furry and smelly, and would go and find her even though she was a tiny little, almost a baby, and get as close as she could to her, so that when my daughter was probably I don't know, 5, 6, 7, we would hear the dog opening up the gate at the top of the stairs and sneaking into my daughter's bedroom and lying on the foot of her bed, and I think that gave my daughter a great deal of comfort. The dog could play games, the dog could play house, the dog could play in all kinds of different ways. My daughter then did become a horse rider and a veterinarian, but it's the family pet is as much of a companion and a person, and I think autistic people, because of the wide range of sense experiences that go with animals, and the kind of mute trustingness of animals, I think they're a very positive thing for autistic families.
I mean, I did grow up. My dad had dogs. When I was born, he already had a dog for many years. A whippet called Cindy. And I remember the dog very vividly because I had a bad leg. Because I think she was knocked down some years before. My dad had a few dogs. Wasn't particularly, there was no relationship attached to it, but it was good that the dog was there, part of the family thing, and it was nice, and it was very sad when the dog passed away. There was other animals. I think what happened basically, they tried a few pups, mum and dad, but mum and dad worked, both worked, and they were always out, and puppies needing a lot looking after, and there was no one in the house because we were at school and all that, and very hesitant to take dog walks and all that. So a lot of the animals in my childhood, apart from the dogs that I've mentioned, particularly the first one, was mostly caged pets like a budgie or a canary. It was a particular canary, and that's a bit different. But even though I don't have a dog, and I wouldn't have a dog, um, I'm not a particular fan of cats. But my brother and sister, they both have cats, and they love their cats to bits. But dogs, I do what I like about some dogs is I can see the comfort they bring to people in terms of the loyalty and how that can be so comforting. And the only reason I don't have one is because I don't want to. I'm kind of lazy. I live on my own. I quite like the life that I've got, and looking after dogs is quite a big responsibility. And I don't want to turn into one of those people that are too lazy to do that side of things. That's not in my nature to do that anyway. But yeah, I can relate to a lot of that, even though I haven't had that sort of connection. But I do believe that I do see how that any pets can give that connection to people, especially if it's a dog or a cat that's been in the family for such a long time, and as opposed to kind of described. I mean, it was a cat that was a part of the household for over 17 years. The next post is from the Little Black Duck, and they're a local business, an autism specific service focused on improving the well-being for autistic people and their community, and they're based in Australia. It's about anxiety and autism, and I'll read the first part of the supporting text. It says that autistic people are detailed orientated thinkers, and as a result experience the world and ourselves in a highly nuanced way. This often means we find it difficult to generalize our emotions and experiences. Part of implementing appropriate interventions and therapeutic supports for detailed orientated thinkers needs to recognise that nuances and understanding where the root of the challenge is actually coming from. Anxiety is a result of different root challenges. Effectively supporting anxiety needs to recognise and manage the root challenge to change the outcome. There's a lot more information here, but it's a kind of good introduction. Um, Anxiety and autism, that is very common. The detailed orientated thinker, I think that describes me. Always trying to look for a solution, even though it's sometimes it depends on what the issue is, but I'm always looking for a solution in some way. And that's how sometimes anxiety can come in because you feel there is no solution evident, in the timeline that you would like, because the longer it takes to solve an issue or a problem, it feels that it's your fault or my fault that can't actually you can't figure it out because you feel you should be able to figure it out. It's one of those self sort of criticism things as well that creates anxiety. That's certainly what I experienced in my own personal life.
But I don't think a difference whether we're surrounded by other folks who come across as handymen all the time and solve things and have the sort of expectation that puzzle solving is the thing you can get. Or think of you as good at a particular thing and therefore you can solve problems, and it was not actually a logical inference if you think about it. It's wishful for other folks to lay on you. Learning not to blame yourself is important. It was learning social critique and learning not to accept status quo's value systems around you will help with not blaming yourself.
The thing that as I get older is when I mean get older is more experience of life. So when I look for a solution, it's not just about me finding or solving the issue that I'm thinking part, but looking for someone to assist or someone who, like for instance, the other day, the button in my shower jammed and it wasn't able to turn off unless I kind of turned it off at the Mercer kind of cord, which is not kind of recommended really, but it had to be turned off somehow. And I was thinking in my head, how do I resolve this? Do I need to phone the local council and it's a stranger coming into my house? And it depends who the person is. Sometimes people just go on with the job, but some people ask questions and they'll see a picture on the wall and they're not doing anything bad, but sometimes it just feels a bit invasive, especially if you're a wee bit wound up about something not working. But lucky for me, my dad is actually a kind of bit of a handyman in some things, and he was able to resolve it. So that was the solution for that. But there was a lot of thinking. There was a lot of kind of thinking over things and the drama in my head, and it was resolved, fairly quickly. Um, Although there's a bit of male pride, as I wish I could do that. But it was solved and it was done. But obviously, there's other things that take longer to deal with. So that's what I say to myself. If you want to resolve something, it's not just about doing it yourself. It's about teamwork. It's about getting other people involved to have something resolved. And I've had to do that quite a lot in many things. And stop being hard on yourself. Even though I've just said I was hard on myself when I actually got something resolved because I didn't do it myself. But male pride, I think. Well, certainly my own pride. It's amazing the things you beat yourself up for.
And you're telling people to be easy on themselves, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. It's the usual thing with us, isn't it? We are too hard on ourselves. But there's a lot in this post that's real to us. But just because we find it's real to us doesn't mean we can't find our own ways and solutions through. Everything's always harder the first time, you know? Understanding ourselves is supposed to be a way of removing our limits, not just accepting them.
I mean, a bit of the continuation of the post is called, saying like missing information. And it says detail orientated, sensory based, self explorers, path of seeking, moved on for exploration of details too soon, and there's not enough data to form a concept of a whole, and the anxiety is rooted in understanding support, central coherence and pattern thinking, and its impact on concepts of self, our environment, and knowledge management. And it talks about sensory regulation, the task overwhelm or task demand, interoception, communication. And then it says at the end, the communication rooted in the double empathy problem, pattern thinking, and the central coherence theory. I mean, a lot of that, don't mean to sound disrespectful, is a lot of gobbledygook in many ways, but, and I can understand a lot of it and what it's meaning. Because I'm actually actually feeling a bit anxious, kind of reading it and trying to kind of work out what it's actually trying to say, even though I have an idea what it may be trying to say.
Yeah, I've got comments from Justin on that. He says teamwork and don't take everything all on your own, all by yourself. And he says we do it because of male pride sometimes. And I think he's agreeing, yeah, it's ease up on ourselves.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. This male pride does cause a lot of problems. Even though I'm one of these people that say to others, don't be too proud. This male pride stereotype nonsense, that you see in fiction or in so-called culture that you're supposed to be. I can encourage people, don't be like that. But sometimes it comes naturally to myself when it comes to pride or uh, confidence. It's a strange one. It's so natural, even though I don't particularly like it.
Justin puts up, he says, not beating yourself up or being too hard on yourself. And then what you just said about how it is in the media, as soon as you get an asteroid coming towards Earth in a film, we get this hunky guy and he starts beating himself up saying, oh, I must be able to do it, I have to be the person that does it, and this sort of stuff. Well, that's when an asteroid's coming towards Earth, but we can feel it over not being able to find our glasses. And I think sometimes just recognizing that, wow, this is out of proportion here, and removing those negative words that we say to ourselves can be a relief to us and can just make our lives better. Just taking out those words that we allow ourselves to spin around those heads and challenge them as though those words are coming at us from somebody else. We need to hear those words in our head and say, whoa, no, that's way too far. I've only lost my glasses. I'm not an idiot. I don't do this every day. And, it's fine. I will find my glasses, and then change it into a positive by saying, I found them the last time I lost them.
Yeah, it's certainly true. I've had that. The awkward thing of looking for your glasses, and obviously you don't have glasses on, but usually I have a spare pair that helps me can see to look for them. So, but I've had that with things like diary, phone, wallet, and it's like the end of the world, and it's like blame myself. Why did you put it somewhere you can't find it? And then when you find it, it's like, what was that all about? All you had to do was look, and you got it. So, yep, it's incredible what many people do with themselves, including myself, over something trivial. It's important, but it's certainly not an asteroid.
When I mentioned the asteroid, Justin was reminded of the film Asteroid City, Wes Anderson. And when I see Wes Anderson's films and the way he gets the frame set up, I always think that's an autistic way of doing that. That's very well in line, or it's unusual watching his films. They have a kind of autistic sensibility about them.
I try to, not always successfully, habituate a small range of places to put items I carry around frequently in. Exactly, to try to have backup for when those situations happen.
Looking for solutions. That's the way forward.
Are you meaning something like a man bag, or a small rucksack that you always carry, or something like that, or a briefcase?
Not at all. No, I'm meaning just a few specific locations around my home to just remember by habit, as the places to put anything down that I'm carrying.
Yeah, I think I do the same thing. Also, there are places where I would put the keys in a specific place, or put my mobile phone, and I'm supposed to do it with glasses, but obviously it goes wrong sometimes. And when you do go wrong, it's just a matter of, don't sweat the small stuff. Well, it's not small stuff, it's enormous. I'm autistic, it's difficult, but reducing it to small stuff somehow is the key. And it's it's something we just have to do, even though it's hard. Reducing that stress down and taking control of it, being in control of it.
The next post is from Autistic Ally Support, a digital creator and autistic led support service. I should say, I'll say that again. The next post is from Autistic Ally Support, a digital creator, and an autistic led support and advisory service from Derry, Northern Ireland, United Kingdom. And it's a quote the Autistic Ally basically said, I needed to see this today. And what it says is the fact that others may have it worse doesn't invalidate your struggles or suffering. It is also pretty irrelevant in my view, as our struggles are very real to us and cannot be compared. I can remember that being said to us a few times in the past. As a child, even, it's like you're complaining about something, it's something that may be trivial or something you feel it's giving you a lot of hassle. And then someone says to you, "Oh, it could be worse. You could be hungry. You could be in a war zone. You could be homeless. You could be this. You could have a terrible disease." All this kind of brutal stuff they throw back at you because you're feeling bad about or feeling very intense about something. And I find that very unfair when people do that.
It is. It's one of the ways for them to not take the issue on and have a bloody emotional boost themselves at your expense instead of helping. But my particularly as kids feel this bloody it's a young culture of putting down everything. All confirming it's just not a logical argument exactly as it's being said.
Yeah, I can even recall something being said to me. I can't remember who said it, but I can remember it was actually on the kind of the journey to my diagnosis. Eventually, it was like I was going through a hard time as a teenager, and I think it was basically depression and stress and anxiety that many people go through. And someone says to me, "Well, at least you're not this person. They're going through this. They're going through, their parents are going through a divorce, and your parents are together, and things are better for you that way." And then I can recall going back, going, "I feel terrible." Because it makes you feel, oh, my life's actually pretty good, and I'm moaning and I'm feeling bad. Why am I feeling bad? Because that other person is in an unfortunate position and they're dealing with it better. Or I have no right to feel this way because I'm supposedly in a better position than that other person. It's amazing that people can make you feel bad for the sake of naturally feeling bad because you're unwell. Or, I mean, I think a lot of this actually relates to people with, money or success, and the way that the media and the way people are very judgmental is that if you've got so-called success and you've got money and you feel depressed or bad, a lot of this is related, from my experience in football players. If there's a lot of people come out and talk about mental health, they're stressed, the expectation, the media always on your case. And if they come out and say, "Oh, I'm unwell," or they come out, they're going through a hard time, and people say, "How can you have a hard time because you've got money?" You know, it, the way things throw people, the things that people throw at people for generally being feeling bad and getting through a hard time because there's people worse off than them in other people's view. It can be quite damaging, especially if you're kind of told this or said to this at a particular age. It can affect you in adulthood, but if you're a child and you're going through puberty and all, and you're going through a hard time, then someone says, "Oh, there's somebody that's got worse time than you." It sticks in the head. I mean, it sticks in my head so much. I'm thinking about it 30 years later.
It's certainly not an immediate pull of your strings to feel better. pulling you up off the floor sort of idea. But snapping folks out of things is an old historical attitude, and it's lacking in empathy as well. That has its traces in age and adult-child relations, particularly still. Because there's still a culture of bloody look down, not a default to care where you're at. And yet, there's a social group compared to a worse off society somewhere in the world. It's just excuses to feel comfortable. There's such easy answers there. They're reluctant to drop them.
I think that one of the stereotypes that doesn't help is when many people are going through a hard time, they don't get out of bed. And I mean, I know this has happened to me, and not getting out of bed for a so called routine like going to school, or for many people going to work or going somewhere, or getting out of bed at all looks as laziness, that you're not trying hard enough. And that kind of stereotypical behaviour doesn't help when, if you say you can't go up because of you got a genuine reason, and people kind of put it down. It could be worse. You could be sleeping in the street, or you wouldn't have a comfort. I'm kind of sort of repeating myself a little bit, but it does illustrate the point that comparing people's bad times and put it in a sort of hierarchy to what is worse than you is certainly not helpful to anybody. And, as the discussion that we're having here, a lot of it is like people trying to control you by giving you that sort of mindset and thought to get you moving for the benefit for them rather than for yourself. The next post is from Yen Purkis Neurodiversity page, who's a writer. A place to promote awareness of autism spectrum conditions and share ideas around neurodiversity. And it's an announcement. Exciting news! I have created a whiz-bang course on autism in adulthood. Just getting the logistical side of things done, such as uploading it to the university's website, it is open to everyone, not just students at the university. It covers 9 topics, including identity, advocacy, employment, mental health, relationships, gender, and the neurodiversity paradigm. It is one of the best things I've ever done. This is just a heads up. I will send a link to enroll when it's available. Cost is $700, which includes access to the course and regular tutorials. If you work as a clinician, educator, manager, or support worker, the course will absolutely knock your socks off. Also useful for parents, neurodivergent and neurotypical, and autistic people. I'm very proud of this and watch this space. What's your thoughts?
think the reality for me is that is probably worth $700 if you are making your career and money in autism. But for me, as the autistic guy on the street, I don't buy things that that cost money to do with autism. I don't pay to go to lectures. I don't pay to go to forums or counselling sessions. It would just cost me an absolute fortune. That person's obviously put some high grade work together, and he seems to be selling it at a bargain in comparison to the kind of products that are provided for people in the professional sphere. I wish him every luck, or wish them every luck. I don't know the gender. But for me, the real gaps are free stuff. Getting free information, sharing information freely. That's where it is for me. I know that's not possible for this person because they have a career. But for the rest of us, the free sharing of things is what I need.
That keeps to a manageable number. The class size for doing the first doing it together, and not the number he'll get. It's particularly for something circulated worldwide. Well, mind you, for autistic people, well, yeah. May be useful for some with that in their pockets, but should they be passing the clinician, educator, manager sounds the real target group. And work clinician, both of the sorrow saying the health service should be doing it, but where it's not. We need clinicians and educators. Updating. Got some good on the ground insight. And I'm glad identity is in there. I'm glad mental health is in there. And chance to think about advocacy is in there.
It's good to see that, as you're saying, Morris, it's it's well covered, and there's a lot of positivity in there in terms of what's included in there. Like identity and accuracy, and that sort of kind of thing, because it does appear that many others in the past were very limited in what they talked about. And this seems a bit a wider scope. I mean, it covers 9 topics. Obviously, there's a lot more than 9 that could be discussed, but it's certainly a great start, especially if it's sharing with clinicians and educators, managers, support workers, etc. And a lot of work looks to have went into this. So it can only be a good thing, although it looks costly. But as you say, as Julian says, I mean, it's costly to many people, but a lot of work has obviously went into this, and things like this. I mean, there's going to be a cost of some kind, and you don't want to criticise that too much. Although I've got to say, I mean, when I seen that at first, but then you try to kind of put it in perspective, the cost and things like that. You know, people are making a living as well as, I mean, a lot of work must have went into this. You know, just even looking at this particular information, it looks like a lot of work has been put into this, and I know that a lot of work has been done elsewhere as well.
Appreciate every professional who it makes better.
The next post is from Neurodiverse Journeys, who's an author, neurodivergent author, consultant, advocate, and coach, autistic, ADHD, PDA parent to neurodivergent children. And what they've shared is a quote. And it says, when a fellow neurodivergent apologises for oversharing, it's basically saying, no need to apologise, this is the way. And it's true. I mean, sharing your story, sharing information, it's how you begin a conversation, if that's the way you want to do it, especially if you feel it's a safe environment to do so. And I've been in a few situations like that myself, you know, groups, online kind of meets with people that I trust, people that I feel comfortable with, and to have that discussion. And sometimes there's a lot of things to share that it's kind of piled up and it feels very uncomfortable, and it's making you feel ill, make me feel ill. And then sometimes most of the time, once you share it and you actually talk about it, you're letting it out. And sometimes either it's a listening ear, or sometimes it's someone sharing, listening, or providing not an answer, but basically a response to what they're listening to. Not ideally giving solutions, but even just talking and sharing, and someone listening and understanding what you're sharing is very beneficial, especially to health and well-being.
Yeah, it seems to me this concept of oversharing um, is, as you say, it's restricting people talking about their mental health and about really serious, important issues. So we should actually be encouraging people to share more. Stop calling it oversharing. For me, it's interesting. It's not small talk, it's real stuff. So when people are sharing even their most difficult things, it's of value to me. It's interesting. It has lessons for me. Oversharing? That's some kind of neurotypical, judgmental, oh, let's get on with something else. Let's only have conversations that are equal and tit for tat, you know? But that's really restricting to the human being.
It certainly is, because a lot of things that have been shared or so-called overshared in some people's perspective, a lot of it has been held in, it's been bottled up for a long time, because I've done it myself, especially um, you know, when I wasn't understanding what's going on. So, teenage years, it's like you felt there was no one to speak to. But sometimes even now, because I live alone, I mean, I do speak to people and I do, but there's times where I've been at home, sometimes it can be a day or two, and there might be something on my mind that I just want to share with someone. Obviously, it's not just anybody, it's somebody that I feel comfortable with. And having that ability just to let it all out to a degree. And other people have did that with me as well. And that conversation that I've had, which happens that way, it's so pleasant. There's some things obviously people are sharing that's quite intense, and it brings a tear to your eye, but it's just so it just feels great in terms of you're listening, you feel you're caring, and sometimes if you feel that you can provide a bit of comfort to that. And sometimes it turns out, that some people are feeling the same way or having the same experiences or similar experience to you, and it seems a lot more. Um, you don't feel strange, or you don't feel. It just makes you feel mutually better, and sometimes that's enough for a lot of people. I know it is for me. Like I go to a friend that I don't see very often. In fact, I do that with a lot of people. There's people that my sister, brothers, I don't see all the time, and it's like a catch up. And it's not all autism exclusive. I mean, there's people share things and through hard times and just sitting talking about it nice and comfortably over a cup of tea or whatever, in an uncomfortable setting and talking about it. There's no drama. It's just kind of just talking, and there's no rush for it to be said, and there's no time limit. It's like, right, okay, let's get on with it. Things that are, time, there is no time bar. Things are allowed because that is certainly needed for a lot of people. Because I know it's certainly needed for me, and it does help me so much, and I know it helps a lot of others as well.
Yeah, there's something about our society that's changed since we lived in cities. I live in a small town, and I'm much more likely to come across somebody who I know vaguely or well and will have a real conversation. Um, they'll tell me about a real big problem on a farm, or something that's affecting their family, or they'll say something about their kids, and if it goes into something that's important to them, they will. And it looks as though in other situations people don't do that with the people that they know. They they don't have the opportunities for that, and they get it vicariously by watching dramas and soaps and the difficulties of people's lives all around us in actual real human beings near us. But if you watch it through a screen, it's a controlled environment, and it's more possible for people to go through their emotional needs then. I personally prefer it in real life, as much as possible.
Yes, I've seen that in my own town, which is quite a small town. Small, it's a small community, but a big community in other ways, because a lot of the towns and villages, it's like they've all kind of merged into one, and it's like in many ways it's like a big family. Not always, but in many ways it is. I mean, I may speak to someone that may not know me, but they'll know my parents, or they'll know my brothers or sisters, or they'll know someone, an auntie or uncle, and there's sometimes opportunities, to share, and it is, it doesn't have to be, totally letting a lot of things out. Sometimes even a bit of small chat, um, it helps a lot because you're speaking with people and you're sharing and you're giving a point of view, about particular things. And I've noticed that a lot, even speaking to some of the neighbours, it's just like this sort of kind of nice wee feeling. You've spoken to someone, you've connected with someone, and that might be the only person that you've connected that day for whatever reason. That is very beneficial, and I like that. Um, and I certainly would want to live in a city, because when I speak to my brothers and sisters who who live in the city, and they want to be there. There's a reason, it's hustle and bustle, and that's the kind of life they're talking about. They talk about they hardly ever see their neighbours. Everybody for themselves. It's not bad, it's just different. And it's certainly not something I would be comfortable with. It's like everybody's a stranger.
And one of the ways of bringing people close together is online meetings and forums, and especially I can't encourage people enough to find other autistic people who are willing to have regular conversations so that they can overshare with people who understand their lives.
I totally agree. The online option is there for many people, and it has helped me as well with that sort of thing as well. So you don't need to leave the house sometimes. Just even though there's a lot of bad things said about online here and learning there, online is one of the few places that a lot of people have for connection with others, and it's great that that exists because it's probably, well, not probably, it certainly has kind of brought a lot more people into a community that they didn't have before, and that can only be a good thing in many ways. The last post is from Brightfire CIC, Community Interest Company, a non-profit organisation, mental health services for autistic and ADHDers, diagnosed or self-identified clients welcome, based in the UK. And what they've shared is a post about an experience. And it says, I love my job. Spent today with such a great group of autistic folks thinking about autistic burnout and sharing poignant moments and experiences. It is the ninth time that I have run this course with the Cart Shed, and every time I am moved by the participants and their support for each other. It can be an emotional and painful journey at times, but it is also valuable to share a heartfelt and meaningful space with other autistic people. To everyone who has ever been to the Being Autistic groups, thank you. I am so glad to have met you all. And they shared a picture. Basically, the end of the day picture, following much sharing and creativity. It's something that we've talked about before. This sort of kind of place that people can come and feel comfortable. It's that comfortable environment and comfortable company again. So it's good that we've kind of touched on that tonight.
Yeah, it's artist therapy, and it's also the place that they are, isn't it?
Does it continue open-endedly for them?
I'm not sure, but I think there may be a continuation of some kind because I think we've kind of talked about the Cart Shed before, and it's like somewhere that people can go. So I would say possibly yes, but obviously they run like courses and different. That's kind of obviously time limited, but there's an opportunity to use it for like a continuation or a meeting place, basically. I think.
Yeah, go back into something, and
Yeah.
do new things in it and extended things in it. A project kind of on a running project.
Yes, it certainly looks the case, and it has been promoted many times before. And it's just great that these things exist because we know that people are kind of limited in some other areas for that comfortable environment. So thanks everyone tonight. That's us just about out of time. It's been a great discussion once again. A lot of varied discussion. And a thank you to everyone that shared these posts. I mean, they're very heartfelt, very different, and it creates so much discussion, which greatly benefits us and hopefully the people who listen to it as well. So this is Spectrum Voices Conversation, here every Sunday, 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. UK time, which is 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, United States. So thank you again. I look forward to doing it next time. Thanks for joining us. Good night.
Good night.